Grace is hyper. Carlos, you're just one of those hyper grace preachers. I know it. You're one of those hyper grace preachers. You should balance it with the law. The law came through Moses. Grace and truth came through. Come on, man. Grace is hyper. No, it's not, brother. If you preach grace so much and you're so heavy on grace, it's going to give people a license to sin. Have you ever heard that? Slow down the grace talk, brother. People are just going to be like, well, if I'm forgiven, I'm just going to go sin anyway. And I like to agree with you, but I just don't find that in Scripture. Let's go to Romans chapter 5 real quick, and I'll close with this. Romans chapter 5, right? Paul says this. I'm going to go with Paul. Hyper grace, really? Grace is hyper. Don't do that. People are going to sin. Moreover, the law, the performance for righteousness entered so that the offense might increase. So when you put people under performance, they just sin more. That's what it's saying. But where sin abounded, we're not denying that there's no sin, grace abounded much more. So when people tell me, you know what, Carlos, don't preach grace because people are going to go sin more, I'm like, you just twisted Scripture. What you're saying is that where grace abounds, sin abounds all the more. And that's not what this is saying. So how do you get people out of sin? You show them the grace of God. You show them the revelation of what God sees. And when they embrace that, they don't want to sin anymore. I sound like a broken record because I preach this week after week after week, but this is what grace is for. And when you say grace, no, don't preach it enough. What you're saying is hide from them the substance that saves them. And I'm not just talking saved for eternity. I'm right now. What good is a postponed eternity if it doesn't affect you right now? Jesus said he hated postponement type of eternity preaching. He said, you say that the harvest is 3 and 4 months from now. And I say, if you open your eyes now, you can benefit it now. No, Carlos, but don't do it. It's going to make them sin more. Well, I'm sorry. I'm going to go with Paul on this one. Where sin abounded, grace abounded much more. What you're trying to tell me is that where grace abounds, sin just keeps going more and more and more and more. Come on, man. Next scripture, let's go to Titus. For the grace of God that brings salvation has appeared to all men, teaching us what? To deny ungodliness, worldly lust, and showing us how to live soberly, righteously, and godly in the present age. Right now. Oh, no, grace will cause you to sin more, brother. No, it empowers you not to sin. It's saying it encourages you. It gives you a belief system that you don't believe yet that's caused you to be dormant and depressed and sinful. It gives you a new identity so you open to living soberly. Gosh. Go tell them there's a hyper grace preacher in town. The term is called hyperparesis. Hyperparesis. Somebody say hyperparesis. In Romans 5, I just showed you right now. Where grace abounded all the more. That word abounded is hyper. Hyperparesis. Hyper, beyond measure, exceedingly. So even if there's sin available, grace abounds hyperly. Grace abounds hyperly. So it doesn't give you a license to sin. Next screen. Grace isn't a license to sin. Grace is the divine empowerment because it wakes you up to who you really are, puts the robe on you, brings you in the party so you can live righteously. And I think this is the biggest takeaway from the prodigal son. You see in the life of the older brother and the younger brother. And it says this, that sin isn't about what you do or what you haven't done. Sin is about missing out on sonship, the declaration of putting on your new robe. You will automatically sin when you're not in the party. Because you're trying to find a way to work yourself into the party when that's what Jesus came for. So you can rest today. God does not regret saving you. He's not like, oh my gosh, she messed it up again after I gave her grace. No, when you understand the grace has been given to you, everything changes. And if we don't get the big rock in first, man, we're going to be peddling small ones the rest of our lives. And you can heal the sick, raise the dead, bring revival, and still live as an orphan outside the house.